All right, CNT120, we're working on the Chap1Lab. We just got done looking at layer 2. That was our network card, our network adapter, the MAC address on our computer. We are now going to work on layer 3. So again, layer 1 was the cable that connects our computer into the network in our lab PC example. Layer 2 was the network card that we looked at on the back of the computer, the blinking link lights. And that is the network adapter that is getting us access to the network and has built in or burnt in its MAC address, the physical address, to identify that NIC on the computer, identify that device, that PC on the local network. So now that we looked at that, let's take a step further through the OSI model, if you will, and we're going to look at layer 3. Now, layer 3, this is, in most cases, our IP address that identifies this computer in a bigger scenario. The MAC address identified it locally for the switch, if you will, so kind of like in this room. Once we get outside of this room, we need the IP address, and the IP address is going to help us identify what network. And here I think I have an example, Harrisburg campus of Hack as opposed to the York campus of Hack. So when I look at the IP address, from that I should be able to tell, well, it's this network opposed to this network. In our case, it might be the Harrisburg campus of Hack as opposed to the York, Gettysburg, Lancaster, Lebanon campuses. Okay, that's what we should be seeing when we look at the layer 3 IP address. So let's start off. We're going to look at the network and sharing. So I'm going to close out command prompt for now. I'm going to minimize my results file. Okay, I'm not closing, I'm just minimizing. So let's look at network and sharing again. So we'll look at network connections. I'm going to right click here, network connections. Let's open the network and sharing. There's our network and sharing down here. There we go. Network and sharing. This is our Ethernet 3 NIC, so we're going to open that guy. Open up the Ethernet 3, that's the one we've been using. And here was the properties we saw. We saw it's moving data in and out. Okay. Now we're going to open the actual properties of this network card. So this is now showing the actual properties of this network card. And we're going to take note of a couple things. We're going to take note of the client for Microsoft Network. So this first thing here that's installed is the client for Microsoft Network. So if we wanted this computer to be on a Windows Server network, this client here would allow us to do so. This client install would allow this to log in and authenticate to a Windows server. The next one we're looking for is file and printer sharing. Well, we're going to pass by the VM. The VM bridge allows us to do virtual machines on this computer. That's what that's there for. If I keep going, we have file and printer sharing. This is installed to allow us to do a peer-to-peer network. So we could, in this lab, put a folder out there, share it, and move data between the computers locally in this room. That's what that is there for. We see the NPCap driver. That is for some applications we're going to use later this semester. I'm going to keep going. We have IP version 4. This is installed on our computer so we can use the TCP/IP protocol suite to communicate between computers. Once upon a time, you had to install this, and you might actually, depending on the network you're on, might be having IPX/SPX or IBM SNA if you were running a token ring. So this was installed so that I can run it on a TCP/IP network. Well, that's kind of there by default now. We're going to highlight this IP4, and we're going to click on properties. So we're now going to see what the settings for this computer is as far as layer 3 IP addressing is concerned. Right now we see it's set for obtain IP address automatically. This means this computer on boot up asks a server, can I borrow an IP address for a while and use it? And the server responds to you saying, yeah, here you go. Well, that's a DHCP server. The DHCP server is handing me an IP address that I can borrow for a while. The idea here is this computer does not need to, we don't need to plug all these numbers in. Most people, most users, if they had to plug all these numbers in, would probably get a typo in there and their connection would not work. So this allows on startup the computer to get the appropriate address for that network and use it temporarily, usually for maybe like a day or two, and then it renegotiates and says, can I keep borrowing that? Okay. If I were to click the use the following, I'll do that just for now so you can see. You see all of these open up, and it would allow us to plug in numbers over here. So then we can put in a static IP address that we wanted to define to this computer. This we get done typically if this computer might be a server that I need to have people access. We need it to have a consistent number so people can find it. We might do this on a printer so that we can continually find that device and print to it. Those kind of things would get an IP address assigned to them. So we would use a static IP. Now, just as a side note, we are going to do that for some labs in here. We're going to set a static IP, use it, and then when we're done, we're going to switch it back to obtain an IP address automatically. Okay, so right now this is set for dynamic addressing, is what we would call that, getting an IP address automatically. So I'm just going to do a OK here, OK close, and I'm going to make sure all that got applied and basically put back to dynamic. So we actually have a dynamic IP address assigned on our machine. Well, let's go look at what the command prompt says is going on for this network card. So we're going to close all those. I'm going to open up my network, my command prompt again. And I think it didn't save my settings. So let's go back here to font 24. And we'll say, okay, there we go. Probably need to go in and set the defaults in that. All right, so now let's look at the command prompt, and we're just going to do a simple IP config, just the basic IP config. It's not going to give all the extra details, so I'm not going to see the MAC address, and I'm going to see all kinds of other details. I'm just going to see the basics. Again, we're going to look for Ethernet 3, and this shows me my IP address, my subnet mask, and gateway that got assigned to my computer. So this IP address is identifying my computer on the network at layer 3. The MAC address was layer 2. This is layer 3. Okay. The subnet mask is there to let us know what parts of the address are network, which part is host. We'll talk about this more in chapter 3, but super quickly, when I see the 255.255.255, it's letting me know these three pieces are the network. Kind of like saying Main Street Mechanicsburg, PA. It's identifying the network. So in this case, it's probably identifying the Harrisburg network, or maybe even the network in this building. Maybe it's just the network for the Hall Tech building. Okay. The last piece out here says 0, so this is identifying this computer. This number is now unique to this computer in the room. There's no other computer in the room that has 107. So that would be identifying my computer in this room at layer 3. That's what that would be doing. And yeah, that's exactly what the subnet mask is doing. Let me know what part is network, what part is host. And last but not least, the gateway. This is the address of the router that most likely is down the hall. And it's there to, I point my device to that router, and that router would route my traffic outside of this building, maybe over to the main router and out to the ISP kind of thing. So this is the device of a router, or a device like that firewall gateway kind of device that's going to route my traffic outside of this building and out to maybe, in this case, the internet, if you will. Okay, that's what that address is showing me. Now, if I look at this, can we tell if this is static or dynamic at this point? Just by looking at this? No, actually we can't. We can't tell if that's static or dynamic. So we're now going to use the ipconfig all command. So I'm going to do ipconfig again, /all. And now I get everything like I saw before. I'm going to scroll up again. I don't need Ethernet 4. I don't need the wireless adapter. I don't need the wireless LAN. I don't need any of those. Okay, up top here, I don't need these. Here's general, Ethernet 6, VPN. I need the Ethernet 3. That's the one that we're using. So if I look at this data now, can I tell if it's a dynamic address? Well, yes, I can. So I look here, 192.168.10.107. There's the IP. There's the subnet mask again. Down here was the gateway. Okay. But if I look right here, lease obtained, lease expires. This says the lease got obtained January 22nd, and it's going to expire Tuesday, February 4th. So it looks like this is good for about 2 weeks. Okay. It looks like this is good for about 2 weeks. So this, since I'm borrowing the IP address, is saying when I leased it and when it expires, this lets me know this is a dynamic address, and it even says, hey, here's the address of the DHCP server. That's the address of the server that's going to let me borrow and use IP addresses temporarily. So now when I look at that and see the lease expired, lease obtained, lease expires, and I see the DHCP server address, I know this is the dynamic address. Okay? All right. Next thing we're going to do, we're going to ask our neighbor, either next to you or across the table, we're going to ask what their IP address is. You know, in this case, mine is 192.168.10.107. They'll look for their line like that. Again, Ethernet 3. IP address right here. They're looking for that line, and they're going to let you know what their IP address is. What we're going to try to do now is communicate between. We're going to use what's called a ping. Ping is a little teeny data packet that we send to another device, a computer. If that device, that computer is on the net, it's turned on, it's on the network, configured with TCP/IP, it should respond to me saying, yeah, I'm here, and literally send a little teeny data packet back to me. So we're going to issue what's called a ping to that IP. So it's going to look something like this: ping, space, and I plug the IP address in of my neighbor computer. So I'm going to do this. I'm going to do ping, and I'm going to use the gateway address on my computer because I don't have a lab partner right now. So the gateway address, where was he? Oh, I'm looking at the wrong one. There's Ethernet 5. Keep going. Keep going, Mr. Brown. Keep going, Mr. Brown. There we go. There's the default gateway. So I'm going to use this. Nope, there's Ethernet 3. I'll get it yet. It should be 10.1. That's the one we're looking for. I'm going to use the default gateway in my scenario because I don't have a lab partner right now. So I'm going to ping 10.1. And since I have connection to that, it replied to me. I sent a data packet over, and it replied with a data packet. Well, when I use the ping command, it sends it 4 times. So I sent data packet over, waited for a reply, sent a data packet over, waited for a reply, and it happened 4 times. And this is letting me know we have connection at layer 3. Everything's functioning as it should at layer 3. Whoop, whoop. Okay. If I didn't have connection, let me try. I'm going to try a random number here, 190 or something. I have a feeling that's not assigned to anything. So I'm getting destination unreachables. That means I don't have a connection at. Well, it's probably not even a node that's out there. Okay. I don't want to see this. I actually want to see these successfuls up here. So if need be, repeat this, check for typos, and you're looking for this kind of response. Reply from. Okay. All right. Now we're going to capture that. We want to grab the ipconfig all for our NIC, and then we want to grab the ping. So I'm going to scroll up here, and I need to find my Ethernet 3. That's the one we've been using. There we go, Ethernet 3. I'm going to highlight this because now I can see the IP address, the lease obtained, all that good stuff. I'm going to do a Control-C on that. I'm going to open my command prompt. I'll put a note in here. This is my layer 3. And we're going to put a note that this is my IP config / all command results. That way I know what this is. And I will paste that in. And then I'm going to come down here. I'm going to do ping command results because that is the next thing we are going to paste in. So I'm going to scroll down here to the bottom now, and I want this successful ping. I don't want the unreachables. Okay, I want this successful ping right here. If need be, repeat until you get a successful ping. Check for typos, check your neighbor for IP address, make sure you have the right IP, etc. I will paste that in. There's my successful ping results for layer 3. And again, I'm going to save this file. Make sure you're saving. And again, I would save it in the documents folder, maybe into a folder for your lab files. All right, we now have layer 3 functioning. We'll come back in the next podcast and talk layer 4.